Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. Got another Master Duel video for you. Coming at you with a ban list update. I actually missed this. This got announced like 12 hours ago at the time I'm recording this, and I just somehow failed to open Master Duel and look at it or pay attention online, but we actually have a new Master Duel ban list, and it's actually going to be hitting some cards that are pretty relevant to the current metagame. Not just limits, but as you can see, bans as well. We've got bans for Naturia Rosewhip, as well as Performapal Five-Rainbow Magician. Of course, there are some limits, as well as a couple of unlimits here, too. Synchro Overtake is going from 3 to 1. Herald of Orange Light going back from 3 to 1. I say back because if I remember right, it was around tier limits format. Yeah, because it would have been, of course, because of like the Ishizu cards. That Herald was originally limited to 1, and now it is going right back there. And then on top of that, as mentioned, we have a couple of unlimits. Kashtira Fenrir going from 1 to 3. And on top of that, Metamorphosis coming off the ban list and is coming back at 3 copies. So pretty huge changes all around to talk about here. I think one of the most notable aspects of this ban list that I'm really excited about is that they're actually addressing a deck that just got released, which is of course going to be Cool Tune. Now, notable to see here that none of the actual Cool Tune cards have been hit. It's a pretty well-known fact that Konami does not tend to limit or ban or otherwise restrict cards that are currently for sale in the latest selection packs in the shop. However, Naturia Rosewhip and Synchro Overtake are both cards that are very predominantly used in the Cool Tune deck. So I really like that they're willing to address the issues that the deck has, at least somewhat, to the extent that they can, you know, before the cards go out of the selection pack, and then they're more eligible to be limited or banned. I also don't think that's a bad practice either, by the way. When you take into account that Master Duel will sometimes also do pre-hits, could they have done pre-hits for Cool Tune? I think so. I think Rotary to 1, I liked that in the Dual Triangle event as a way of balancing Cool Tune. They maybe could have considered that. But at the same time, again, I actually don't mind that they give decks a little bit of wiggle room before, you know, banning cards from their actual specific archetype. I think that's totally fair. Again, when you also factor in that they often, maybe not always when they should, but often do pre-hits when necessary. Anyway, let's talk about the actual cards that were hit here. So Naturia Rosewhip. In Master Duel, this is currently a pretty optional tech in Cool Tune. However, if you look at OCG play, it's actually been getting more and more popular as Cool Tune is getting better and better. It's important to remember that in the OCG, not only is Cool Tune at full power, but they also have the hand trap Vidralius Harmonia, which makes any synchro-based deck a lot scarier and a lot more powerful. I was actually just reading a Road to the King article the other day talking about the OCG metagame that mentioned that Naturia Rosewhip is becoming more and more popular over there because of Sky Striker. Sky Striker is actually one of the best, or I guess rather worst matchups for Cool Tune. Cool Tune is one of Sky Striker's best matchups. And Naturia Rosewhip is Cool Tune's best way of countering the Sky Striker matchup, for obvious reasons. So I think it's totally fine to ban a card like Rosewhip that's just directly countering a deck's natural weakness. Board breakers in general, like Super Poly, are very, very good against Cool Tune. And of course, Sky Striker being a spell-based going second deck has a lot of those. So yeah, I think this ban is totally justified and fair. I think that it's a pretty cold take to say that, you know, these kind of floodgate effects don't tend to be very fun or interactive. And yeah, I think this one was definitely fine to go. Performapal Five-Rainbow Magician going from 1 to 0, finally getting the axe. I kind of did think, you know, when it went to 1, that was kind of Konami's way of being like, okay, this card is on our radar. They'll often do that. I've seen it in the OCG as well. I say I, like I actually play the OCG. But we've seen it in the OCG as well, right? By limiting SP Little Knight. When most decks, aside from like maybe Rescue Ace and a couple of others, only play 1, to me that's less of like, hey, this card needs to go to 1 for balancing purposes, but also kind of Konami's way of just saying like, hey, we got our eye on this card, so if it's a little bit too strong, you know, we might hit it, or ban it. But yeah, 5-Rainbow Magician going to 0 is totally fine. It's just a really, really easy floodgate to slot into really any branded-based like fusion deck, for the fact that you can just send it with Albaz and make Albion, and then have a lot of really easy access to this card. Of course, Strikatail being one of the more prominent recent examples of this card seeing a lot of play. But anyway, yeah, like I said, this card is totally fine to go to 0, and I actually quite like that. Synchro Overtake. Now, this is going to be the other big hit to Cool Tune. And this card is actually, it's interesting, right? Because if you think about it, it does somewhat, I don't know. I was almost about to say that it hinders the design of future synchro monsters that specifically need a named target. I'm actually really not a fan of that argument, but I was thinking about it as I was about to say that, and I'm like, you know, aside from Cool Tune and Synchron, we really haven't even seen examples of that, period. So, like, yeah, when you do it once with Synchrons, the card is fine at 3, because Synchrons aren't an overly broken deck. But then you do it another time with Cool Tune, and then obviously when Cool Tune is already an insanely broken deck, yeah, that kind of makes this card limit worthy. See, this is actually the approach that I much, much prefer. Like, as I just mentioned, a lot of people have this argument of like, oh, you have to keep X card, insert card here, banned because it limits card design. No, I'm saying do this instead, right? Like, let the cards that might be, you know, hindering releases, let them just exist and design the archetype anyway. Then if it becomes a problem, then you can ban the card. Block Dragon's a really good example of this, right? Where for a long time, people argued that Block Dragon had to be banned for good rock decks to exist. And now we have decks like Magnet Warrior, which is a great rock deck, and Block Dragon, yeah, makes it better, but does not make it broken at all. I think that it would have been fine to have just kept Block Dragon legal the whole time. I don't think it was ban-worthy because of Adamancipator in Master Duel. Even at Adamancipator's prime, which was when we had the Ishizu cards but not Tearlaments, even then Adamancipator was not a tier 1 deck. And if you look at the OCG, Block Dragon always existed at 1, and it was fine. It never needed to get banned. So I always kind of made the argument back then of like, you know, hey, Block Dragon should be legal, then if the broken rock deck comes along that's a problem, then we can ban it. So I'm a fan of this. I'm a really big fan of moves like this. I think this is good. I think this card is limit worthy for its role in Cool Tune and potential future roles in similar synchro-based decks. I don't think, of course, it's a problem in Synchron, but yeah, a great way of hitting Cool Tune without having to hit Cool Tune. I do think that in the future, if we see cards like Rotary or other Cool Tune cards getting limited, maybe we could then think about unlimiting this, but at the same time, Duelist Genesis, not the set, the spell card, is still around at 3 and can still search both this and Cool Tune Synchro. So at the same time, except for playing a little bit more into Droll, it doesn't really matter that much. But also, to be fair, Synchro Overtake was one of the better extenders for playing through or around Droll and Lockbird. So I don't know. I don't think that Cool Tune being a little bit weaker to Droll is a bad thing for how strong it is in the current meta. Herald of Orange Light, as mentioned, going back to 1 from 3, having previously been at 1 because of the Ishizu cards in Tearlaments. Yeah, you know, Herald of Orange Light, so obviously what this is being played in now is a couple of different things, actually. Sulfa Chord Yummy, and I think Gymnite Tearlaments, or Fiendsmith Gymnite, rather. Not Gymnite Tearlaments. Fiendsmith Gymnite, which did pretty well in the latest Duel Scup. I'm pretty sure they also play Orange Herald, right? Because don't Gymnites have some fairies? Like Nephilim or whatever? Anyway, I should know that off the top of my head, but I think that Herald of Orange Light... See, this is another one of those cases where, like, you could make the argument that it always needed to stay limited because it hindered how good fairy decks could be. But again, I'm a much bigger fan of this because up to this point, I don't think there was much argument for Herald of Orange Light not to be at 3. And I don't think that Yummy necessarily needs any more hits. I'm viewing this mostly as a hit towards Sulfa Chord Yummy and trying to, like, bring down the overall power level of that deck. Which was the most represented deck in the latest Duelist Cup. And I don't think the Sulfur archetype needs any hits. That, I think, pretty much goes without saying. Might be a hot take, but I don't really think the Yummy archetype needs any more hits right now either. That could change in the future, but for the time being, I don't think it's particularly overpowered. And yeah, Herald of Orange Light, just being a really, really strong hand trap, has been limit worthy in the past. I can see the argument for limiting it now. I think this is fine. Kashtira Fenrir. Okay, so these are the unlimits. Kashtira Fenrir going to 3. I'm predicting that a lot of people are not going to like this, but I love this. I think this is a great change. I think we're at a point where Kashtira has kind of just been power crept as an archetype. I'll make the same arguments against it that I made when Arise Heart first came out, of why I didn't think the card was going to be particularly scary in Master Duel, which is the fact that, you know, the end board of Kashtira doesn't have any negates or any form of protection on it. You know, Arise Heart, you can out it with Smashing Ground, right? It's a very, very easy card to remove. There's a number of ways you can do it. And I definitely think it's been a long time, well over a year at the very least, since Kashtira has really had any prominent meta relevance. I know it's been around here and there. I know especially at lower ranks, you'll see it every now and then, but I really don't think it's been a meta threat or contender. Pretty much, I think you could even make an argument of Prosperity's ban being one of the nails in the coffin for Kashtira. That's how, like, down bad they were for just cards that made them resemble consistent. But no, I think Fenrir to 3 is fine, even with Arise Heart still being legal. I think that Fenrir to 3 is also pretty interesting because it also allows this card to be used as an isolated engine, even just beyond its application in Kashtira. When Fenrir first came out in Master Duel, it was semi-limited on release. It was pre-hit. And even at 2 copies, there were a lot of decks that were using it as an extender. I used it in Sprite as an extender, for an example, because Fenrir plus any level 2 monster can go into Sprint, and that can make Sprite plays. And Special Summon Fenrir, add Fenrir, made that a lot more worthwhile as an investment. Like, yeah, you could still technically just throw Fenrir in any old deck like Sprite, but when it's at 1, that doesn't really make as much sense, right? But now this card's at 3, and again, it can search additional copies of itself. That makes it a lot more enticing as an optional, you know, extender for decks. So I'm just thinking about certain decks that would want it, mostly link-based decks, right? And even then, in this meta, it could be a little bit, I don't know, it could be a little bit dicey. Like, you could say, like, oh, Radiant Typhoon, you know, they have a lot of wiggle room, they don't really rely on their extra deck, and they have a Link 2 monster, but Varun requires 2 Radiant Typhoon monsters, so Thunder can't really be used as an extender in that situation. I think this card isn't going to be quite as generic or frequently seen as some people might think. Just going from 1 to 3, it's really easy to be like, oh, now everybody just splashes 3 Fenrir, right? But if you think about it, you know, for a lot of decks, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't really make sense to do in Dracotale. It wouldn't be horrible, but it just wouldn't really make a ton of sense. You know, again, like the Radiant Typhoon example I just mentioned, like, again, you could do it, but, like, does it really add that much value? Cool tune, I mean, it's not like this thing is a tuner, so it doesn't really do as much there. Although I guess it could set up a Baron de Fleur with the level 3s. I still think that's a little bit win more. You know, Yummy, I think Yummy actually has a pretty decent chance of playing this card. Level 7 is not bad synchro material. Although, I guess it's not that great, though, with the level 2 synchro Yummy monsters, right? Because 2 plus 7 is 9. You would want this to be 8. Yeah, so when I think about, like, actually putting 3 Fenrirs into a lot of the top meta decks right now, at the end of the day, it kind of doesn't really make as much sense. K9 Vanquish Soul, I do need to mention that, loves this card. Loves Fenrir. It's an Earth. It's a, you know, it's just really good. Now, granted, Vanquish Soul, I think in particular, likes this a lot more than the K9 aspect. Obviously, this isn't level 5. But I think of the top meta decks right now, that's probably the one where I would consider playing an engine of Fenrir's the most. Even then, though, is it really better than, like, Bestials, which can be used as hand traps? Is it better than using something like Red Layer or RB Vulcan, which is an actual level 5 that can go into K9 plays, I think it's still up for debate. So when I actually think, when I don't panic, right? When I'm not panicking about, oh my god, Fenrir's at 3 and Rise Heart's still legal, when I actually stop and think about the applications of both Kashtira and Fenrir as an extender in this meta, it doesn't really seem that bad to me. So I think this is completely fine. And Metamorphosis. Yeah, this is totally fine. I've made a couple of different videos about looking at the ban list and looking at which cards would be fine to come off of it, and I'm pretty sure Metamorphosis has made the cut every single time as far as like cards that could come off the ban list and there would be no issue. Yeah, I don't know, I just feel like even if a deck could use this to cheat out a really broken fusion monster, Metamorphosis itself is not searchable, which is something that when we do over on the Patreon, not to plug randomly here in the middle of making a point, but over on the Patreon we often talk about new card reveals, like in the OCG as they're coming out, or as they're being revealed rather. And whenever we see like a generic spell or a trap card that looks like it could enable something broken, one of the first points that I'll always make is that, you know, this is not searchable within any given archetype. So you could think about using Metamorphosis again to cheat out a broken fusion monster in various different decks, but just remember, you're always going to have to actually draw the Metamorphosis. And in 2026 Yu-Gi-Oh!, that's actually kind of a big ask. If you're trying to, you know, make whatever combo you're centering around Metamorphosis your main strategy line. Now, if it's like more of an optional extender to go into some side plays, that's obviously totally something different. But as far as like this card being broken, I don't think there's any real danger of that, again, in the year 2026. And that is going to do it for the entire ban list. Yeah, just looking at it all, I think this is great. I like all these changes, and I think that Master Duel has, for me, continued to have just the best ban list philosophy of keeping meta strategies viable while also curbing them and keeping them in check within reason. They do drop the ball sometimes. I'm not going to say Konami's perfect. You won't see me glazing them in that regard. But yeah, no, I think for ban lists, this one is really solid. But definitely let me know what you think as well in the comments below. For the time being, that's going to go ahead and do it. Before we sign out though, let's go ahead and move on to our outro so we can thank our YouTube members and Patreon subscribers. Hey everybody, Hexlex here. Thank you so very much for watching all the way to the very end of the video, which by the way is one of the best ways to support the channel. Speaking of supporting the channel, take a look at the names on screen. These are folks who have been so generous as to either join as a YouTube member or subscribe over on patreon.com/Hexlex to support. There's also perks for doing so. If you would like to see YouTube videos early, as well as some exclusive videos that get uploaded to YouTube, but for one reason or another I decide not to publish, definitely go ahead and hit that join button to see content early, as well as some exclusive content. If you're looking for more exclusive content, over on patreon.com, I upload exclusive videos that are not posted on YouTube just about every single day. Whether you choose to subscribe over on Patreon, join as a YouTube member, or simply continue to watch, your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so very much. But for now, this is Hexlex. I am signing out, and I hope that you have a fantastic day.